Okay, so today we're going to be doing an exercise about action arrows. And so here I've got some examples of annotation arrows and action arrows. Here are the annotation arrows where I'm really just pointing out things as to what's happening in the form, on the page, whether it's a specific, direction or material. This is good for annotating your designs, good for research, good for rough sketches. What I want to look at are more action arrows, where they are the arrows that are often in perspective with the sketch that you've drawn, so that you're showing some sort of movement, some sort of rotation or direction. These are often done or sketched in the perspective of your drawing, and they bring another level of kind of animation to the sketch, which is really nice to show some simple things that are happening. It shows movement. Here I'm just going to show you some examples, and then we'll get into the the exercises for this sketch. So here you can see, obviously, we've all opened one of these cartons before, but pushing that out and rotating them back, kind of along those lines, is definitely something interesting to show instead of it just being a static sketch. Here we've got another one where you can see, there's some sort of button here to turn on the light. That would be a good way of showing sort of how something turns on. Looking back on this now, this doesn't actually make sense because this looks like it's off, but then the light is shining, so I didn't do a very good job. A little inconsistent, but yeah, you can use it in rough sketches as well. It's not like, you have to use it in a specific way, but just to give the page some movement, some sort of direction, that sort of thing. So yeah. So those are some examples. Really what we need is just, pick any kind of marker so you can maybe render it. Just have a warm 30% and some sort of green here with the Papermate Flare. We can do this on any paper. I would just recommend doing it on copy so that you're not using, you can use marker on copy paper. You just don't want to use too much of it because it really soaks up the pigment and you don't really change the color too much. So today we're going to do we're going to do a couple sketches. First, we're just going to do the action arrows in sort of three presentations. They're going to be the planar one, the curved, and a rotation. So it's showing some sort of movement in these two. Actually, they're all showing movement, but they're showing in different sort of degrees. And then we're going to show it on, and then having kind of a combo of these on some basic kind of prisms. So that's the plan. So we're going to have 4 pages of sketches. I'll just start with the planar one here, just so you guys can see sort of what's going on. So this one will be the planar one. So with this one, planar, we are going to essentially drawing any sort of perspective grid. Here's a little exercise that you can do as well. Just having some random lines going in a convergence that way and that way. We've covered this in a previous lecture, but basically we want to be drawing. It doesn't really matter the proportions too much, but we want to have some sort of rectangle plus triangle, where the triangle is sort of the intersection, the midsection of this. So here it'd be good to just add some line weight. Yeah, we're not doing any of the sketching without line weight and without perspective. So it's kind of like a good exercise in a lot of fundamentals that we've been working on. But here I'll just hatch this in so you guys can see it a bit better. So we want some sort of rectangle plus triangle. And this is what we want to map kind of into perspective, okay? So in this perspective, we want to find that intersection, or the midline, just so we know what to sort of hit our point on either end. And you can choose whichever way to do it. You can have the triangle on this side, the triangle on that side. It doesn't really matter. You can have it on both if you want, to show it sort of growing or expanding. But what I want is a page full of these sort of sketches. So you can do them with a grid, you can do them without a grid. We just want to make sure that there's nice convergence and foreshortening of the rectangle and triangle. So here we're going to do it coming this way, kind of coming towards us. And again, the proportion doesn't need to be so specific. We just want to have, I like a sort of thicker, bolder triangle, and not having as thick of a, like you want to have this sort of the arrow, the quintessential arrow sort of proportions here. So here, just for clarity's sake, I'll hatch this as well, just so you can see how these two sort of match up. Yeah, so that's essentially it for planar, but let's do a couple other ones, and we can do, set up a couple perspectives and draw it within it. So here, let's draw a nice one-point perspective, show some grid lines that way. Maybe we'll have one standing up like this. And maybe we have like kind of two if we wanted to, sort of parallel with each other. And drawing the right perspective does help in this. So we're going to have kind of like two right beside each other. We're going to have one sort of laying on its back here. So let's have this one again come towards us. So find that line. Again, we're practicing a lot of the same things, like drawing through our points. I like to see that. I like to see the your lines going not just up to the perspective grid that you've drawn, but also through it. You can always add some line weight back to really define that. So that's nice. And if we wanted to, we can draw an offset shadow for each of them as well. And this one is going to be nice and simple, where we just have the shadow will just be seen under the triangle part of the arrow. Nice. And we can do another one. So they come together pretty quickly. Again, knowing the sort of right foreshortening takes some practice, some getting used to. Let's draw both of these at the same time just to see where they might overlap. Lots of lines, but when you start adding some color, some definition, it'll help. Some line weight will probably help the most. So this one's in front. Let's do that line weight first. I'm going to do this one at the back. So I'm doing this all with that paper mate flare. It could be a nice thin line weight. It could be a nice thick line weight if you go a little slower. Very cool. Yeah. And here I can also demo a little bit of adding color or using a marker in a specific way. So again, these planar ones are just, think of them as flat surfaces that you're sketching out this sort of orthographic view of an arrow. So to add some color, actually, does anyone have any questions so far? No? Okay. Adding some color, we can just take any marker you have. It could be just a gray one as well, but I'm just going to use this green one to show you how I might use the green. I always like to, again, same principles apply of defining your area that you're going to be markering. So again, having those two shapes, I like to fill in the entirety of the triangle, and then we can just do a couple streaks and not entirely fill in that the rectangle. So again, we'll try this one on the other one. Outline where you want your color to go, and then we're going to fill in. And the cleaner you are, the cleaner it'll look. So the same sort of consistent strokes. You'll get this nice blending. You'll get this nice blending together. These were nice parallel strokes. But having it entirely, this is a good way of not using all of your marker, just using enough of it, because you want to make sure that the color is showing itself well on the triangle part, because I think that's kind of the more important part of the arrow, and then however long that the stem of the arrow is, you can just let some light in, basically, and make it a little bit more interesting, I'd say, rather than it being so flat. So yeah, you can do this with your color or with your gray markers. I've got a warm one here, which is why it looks a little bit browner, but we're going to render in that, and then do a couple strokes that way. If you want it to look like you're using two colors to add some more dimension to it, you can just keep adding a little bit more, which is why I like recommending getting a lighter color. They're often pretty strong, I'd say. They often hover around 30% to 50% gray, or 50% sort of darkness. And when it's lighter, you can go back and add in another layer on top of the dry one to add some more depth to your sketch. So yeah, filling a page of these, this is a good size. We can probably fit some smaller ones if we wanted to, but I'd say, making sure that we've got good line weight, good perspective, nice marker rendering. Right? Those are some things you want to keep in mind when doing this. Just kind of throughout, and we're going to be practicing a couple different shapes and directions. Anyone in class have questions about the planar drawings? For those of you that came in late, this will be an exercise, so definitely sketch along now so you can kind of work on it and submit it after class, rather than having to wait for me to upload the video for next week. So this will be your final drawing exercise. Okay, very cool. I guess you've done a good job when you can kind of rotate it and it still has the right sort of direction, orientation. It might look a little skewed from the camera's point of view, but if it still looks natural the other way around, you're doing a good job with your perspective. And if it looks a little bit funny, your convergence might be a little bit off. It might look a little bit more isometric. You want to make sure that there's nice convergence going back in those directions. So we're going to grab a new sheet of paper, put it on top of this one that's taking up some of the marker. And so there you go. We've worked on the planar one. Let's cross off. Let's do the curved one. So the curved one is doing, it's using the same shape, the same arrow, but we're going to be drawing a couple different curvatures to show how it might look if you were to kind of, if it were to go straight and then curved, if it were to be curved all the way through, that sort of thing. Generally, there's no wrong way. If it makes sense for you, you might be opening something, then it. But let's do something that looks kind of plane. Actually, why don't we do one that's a little bit more stepwise? So we're going to have we're going to do two sketches here. One is going to be basically the very rectilinear version of it, and then we're going to do the same one, but we're going to make it curved, and so we can kind of walk through again how to curve your corners. So again, the proportions don't worry too much about the proportions, but we just want to get something that has right convergence. So this one's already basically there as far as making it curve around a corner, but this corner is really sharp. What happens if we wanted to bend it? So to bend it, we want to make sure that we have, and it can go in any, you can choose any two of these points, maybe one on top of the other makes sense. But we're going to do that on all four of these lines, and we're going to be doing essentially what is the outer corner of an ellipse. So I'll draw that ellipse just for example's sake. But you don't really need to. What we need to do is just draw the curvature on these two lines. Okay? So this is where this is just more rectilinear, and this one has curvature to it, right? Generally, when you have kind of two faces like this, it's good to differentiate them a little bit. So I would say picking a light side. Again, we're using a little bit of the light theory we learned in the shadows class, but having something here where it's going to be generally lighter, and then I like to have the sort of inside or underside of things, typically the thing that's darker. So it's the same idea, but I'm going to be definitely filling this in entirely and leaving that side pretty bare. You can add some visual interest there, that's fine. So let's do one there, and let's do the other one in the warm, because why not? Okay, so that's how you'd be adding in the curvature. They don't have to be always going around a corner. Your curves can also do kind of things like this, where, right, you just have a sort of curvature like that, or maybe something a little bit more drastic like this. What's important is that they keep the perspective, and they could be smaller ones as well. Let's do a little small one. Learning how to do them at different sizes is actually kind of a good skill to have, I'd say. But again, we have that sort of center line here. We have this center line curving like that. We want to make sure that it fits the center of, it makes sense as you've sort of curled it, bend it, that sort of thing. Let me just move this up a little bit so we can see what's going on. But again, having good line weight, and you can do, I like to sketch out a couple in a sort of rough way. And not being too, you want it to be in perspective generally, but, keeping it loose makes it a little bit more fun, I'd say. So learning the sort of theory here, but then applying it into a couple lines, making it nice and efficient, will actually make the sketches look a lot nicer. So yeah, you can be doing these, I like to generally build a page out like this, then add marker, then add line weight, but you can add line weight first. You can, work on one at a time, but I like this one because I can look at the page a little bit more generally. So here, let's just do them all in a little bit of the gray, or not all of them. Maybe let's do some of them in gray. I like this one because it is a nice larger surface to render. If they're too small, it's kind of hard to render them. Oh, this turned off. Great. I wonder why that happened. Okay, I think it's still recording. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So here we have our larger surface that we're going to be rendering majority of the arrow, right? So we're going to color that in. And then we can do, some broader strokes down towards the towards this guy. And now let's add some line weight. So again, rotating that page is important to get that line weight. Okay. And we're getting nice line weight from just one pen, right? That's the goal here. And it's especially important in these sort of locations here where we have this sort of curvature onto itself. So you can clean up your lines, make it more visible. So again, some of these we can just do, let's say, a little bit of hatching rather than do all the rendering. It's really just practice, So we're going from edge to edge, a little bit over is fine as well. Nice, consistent patches. Okay? And then this final one. Let's do it also in let's do it a little bit in this gray. So again, finding that side that, pick one of these sides to be the dark side. I'll choose this left side, this inner side. So here I'm not doing all of it again. I'm just doing it around the tightest corner. But wherever it's something like a large flat surface, I like to sort of leave some light. And we're going to keep that. And we're going to do it again over here. So that looks nice. Maybe we'll do a little bit from the arrow. Again, kind of like that. There. Looks pretty good. Now, just a note on this page. We've got some line weight that we need to add on this guy, but this one is really drawing my eye the most just because there's color, but obviously things like line weight have a lot to do with where your eye goes and where it travels, so keep that in mind when you're doing your sketches as well. Again, rotate that page. Right on. So that's good. So here's some good curved action arrows. So we've got those. We've got these planar ones, right? See the difference and how they might be useful. So we can cross that off the list. And now let's do the rotation. Any questions from the class about these curved ones? Cool. So let's do another one. rotation. So this one really will be testing your ellipses rather than just your squiggly lines. You know, here there was a little bit less, or a little bit more fluidity in how these things sort of curved. We had a little bit of ellipse works here, but this one will be predominantly ellipses. So I'll do a nice big one and do it a little slower so we can talk a bit about it. But again, just like every ellipse we've done before, we're going to do a nice big one here. Okay? We want to have a nice intersection along the minor axis where the left side and the right side are equal in their curvature, so that they're pointy at the right, in the right sort of degree. And then we're going to do one below it. So you can do it by extending that midline if that helps you, or if you want, you can extend these exterior lines. And we're going to do another one. So again, I'm ghosting that line to make sure that I'm drawing the right sort of area. And when I want to commit to it, I can go for it. And again, drawing a couple lines is beneficial, because you can be okay with, you know, I'm okay with not hitting this line truly, but I want it to feel, because it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, we can always tighten it up with some line weight. I just want it to feel like expressive and be in the right perspective as well. So that's sort of, again, a little refresher on ellipses. But once we have an ellipse sort of like this, again, we want to show, the idea of this one is that there's something around this minor axis that's being rotated. So we're just drawing the arrows right now to talk a bit about those. But what we can do here is draw another straight line, maybe make it overlap this one just for drawing's sake, and draw your triangle so that we have the start point of our rotating action arrow, and then we also have our end point. At this time, you can also even like divide, since we have the whole ellipse, we can divide it to have, you know, maybe something that starts there and it only rotates, you know, 360. Maybe that denotes a little bit of that. There's no real right or wrong with this one. It's a bit more just about showing or animating rather than it being as, let's say, prescriptive as orthographic symbolism. So now I'm going to add in some line weight. And I'm going to start with the stuff at the front first. Trying to clean up my lines a little bit. Slow and steady. Cool. So that's some nice line weight. And we're missing one line here, actually. We're missing the overlap, which is a little bit thinner, but should still be pretty thick than the outline. So we've got our rotating action arrow. Let's do this one in the nice color. So we've talked about shading when it comes to cylinders. This one we have kind of like a hollow cylinder. We have surface on the outside as well as the inside. Generally what I like to do here is shade in more of that inside, because there's always going to be less light being captured by the curvature of the ellipses here. So to put it plainly, let's just color in the inside. We're not going to do the whole thing, but again, using some nice clean, consistent line weight is great. Marker, rendering quality. And we're going to be doing a couple strokes on the inside, and then leaving some white space here. We're going to do the same thing from the other side. Maybe we can diversify by having a thinner one there. And if you want, you can go back and add in some more color to that corner. This is a sort of, it's fine if this looks kind of streaky, it'll blend a little bit, but there's the least amount of light here in those two corners of this ellipse, so that's where we want to be adding the most marker. Is that clear? So then doing that outside here, let's outline the shape. And we can just add in a couple of these strokes, same thing over here. And maybe this one should be entirely colored. Just feels right. Nice. But play around with it. We just want it to look green. That's kind of the point. And we want to put some more marker, let's say on the inside corners here. That's what you need to kind of take away from drawing these rotating arrows. Cool. So that's that. But you can do this in any sort of direction. This is like vertical, which is probably the most useful one, where like you might have some sort of stick or knob or something to be rotating. But you can also be doing this in a perspective that's sort of on its end or on its side. So again, the same idea applies. You can just be like, if this is drawn correctly, like you can be rotating and it still should look correct. So this is the same idea, basically. Like you could be drawing this straight up and down if you wanted, but it's also good to practice it at an angle. Okay, our two ellipses. Actually, how do I want this thing to look like? Maybe we're going to make it so that you can make the decision like now, but I drew this ellipse a little bit taller, so that's going to be, let's call it the one that's farther away. Let's make like this the inside again, and then this be the sort of outside, and we have the sort of arrow coming down like this. So again, we're going to have, and you can choose where you want your arrow. Let's say we have the arrow like start from that midline. We just want to make sure that this is kind of staying in, staying as the sort of midline. It's almost as if you were drawing a third ellipse, and do a little dotted line for that. A third ellipse is where we want to have our line start from. So there you go. And it doesn't have to like reach the whole way. It's nice when they're sort of close together. There's more to draw, I'd say. But no, by no means necessary. Cool. So we got our line weight down. That's looking good. Looking nice and curled. Let's do it with the worm now. Same idea applies. And if you, it depends on what you're using, but if you're finding that maybe the pen that you're using is bleeding when you add some marker to it, it's probably because you're using like a ballpoint. Here I'm using basically like a very thin Sharpie in a way that we can add on some permanent marker to it. And even if you're using this one and it's blending a little bit, just let it dry. Just let it dry. Okay, so we've got some nice line weight to it where there aren't a lot of shaggy lines, they're kind of crisp. And we can do another sketch where we render it. Okay, so we're going to outline it like that, start from those corners. Go over them a little bit, blend them out. That looks nice. Do it again on this side. Nice. Let's keep it minimal there. We don't have to do anything on the outside of it, just the inside. So there you go. That's how these guys look. Yeah, so we can do another one. Why not? I would say it's a lot harder. It's good if you had like a wider. If you had like there's sort of a sweet spot, I'd say. If you have like a really wide ellipse like this, you know, like you can do something, right? That works fine. You can also have it very narrow like this, you know. It's going to be really tough to do the arrow though, right? How are you going to do this arrow? You know what I mean? This one's too small. This one's too tall, basically, is what I'm trying to say. This one works, but then I like to have something that's a little bit, we're often drawing in a sort of 3/4 perspective anyway, and having a little bit of a, you know, this is sort of the Goldilocks proportion. This one, definitely too tall. This one's okay, but again, really, really wide. Not sure when you'd really be using this. You're often using something like this. So let's just add some line weight to this one, just for the sake of it. And we don't have to mark or render everything on the page. That's a good general rule of thumb. But line weight's always good, easy to put down, and maybe a little bit of hatching. So doing it on the inside. And let's add some line weight here as well, why not? Good practice. Nice and quick sketching. That's the whole point. All right. So this is a nice layout. Good, a little exercise. So that's the rotation one done. Boom. Another one off the list. Very cool. So we've got the planar action arrows. We've got these curved action arrows, and we also got these rotational action arrows. The final thing to do is to draw a couple boxes, or maybe a cylinder, and animate them a little bit. That's the sort of final step. This is already on the, you know, we're already applying a lot of things to this sort of sketching, but what I want to do, and you know, I would say let's leave it up to you as far as how you want to animate it, but I'd say let's start from a, let's definitely start with a cube. Okay, we have a cube like that. And let's say we animate, I'm going to draw another surface here, and this is going to be that top flap of the box. Let's say that box flaps. Let's see how we can animate that. Let's also draw a like two-part kind of cylinder. Maybe it'll sort of change a little bit as it goes down. Let's animate something like that. So again, these are just sort of some basic prisms. And then we can do another thing sort of here. Let's say we have another box. a little bit more shallow. Bless you. And let's just make this, let's have like a little, let's draw like a little switch here or something. So I'm going to just draw a little channel for this to move inside. Okay. And we're going to draw another sort of taller box here. Okay. So those are the three things as far as what you want to draw on. A good thing, you know what about if I'm going to maybe, try to draw something like this. That would probably be best to do sort of on your own. But it would be interesting to see how you guys draw on top of these. So maybe I'll just share a PDF of this and you guys can do your own sketching. You can make them do some sort of movement or add on whatever you like. These are just some good basic prisms to work from. And then you can just focus just on the arrows. So maybe I'll just write a little instruction and then take a photo of this so you guys can do it. Cool. Cool. I don't know if you can do this for those of you in class, but if you're watching this online, have a go at doing this. You can draw this out, if you can print this out, or you can redraw it yourself, whatever works. But that's the plan. That's the plan. All right. Cool. I'm going to stop the recording now.